When it comes to the aspect of selling consultancy services, I've found that most consultants hate selling, not because they're bad at it, but because the way they've been taught to sell feels unnatural. But what if selling didn't feel like selling at all? What if it felt like a meaningful conversation with a prospective client who already sees you as a trusted expert, and the sale happens naturally without pressure or pushback? In this video, I'm going to show you how to sell with power instead of pressure, and I'll break down my power method, the exact 5-step process I use to turn sales conversations into high trust, high conversion client partnerships. In the first video of this playlist, I talked about the difference between the traditional ABC selling and the authoritative selling process that I recommend. With ABC selling, just to recap, it's always be closing. The traditional type of sales process that we often equate with used car salespeople, where it's always about getting the end result, getting the sale, and it's all about pressure all the way through because the focus is on the sale, and it's so much about what the salesperson needs and their goals rather than about what the purchaser needs, although good salespeople marry those two desires together. And that's why not all salespeople are like the used car salespeople that we come to picture, but there's some very good salespeople out there who don't manipulate people, but actually discover what they need. But it's still quite a different process to the authoritative selling process, the power selling process that I recommend. But even with those good salespeople, their approach is still about persuasion and convincing. It's about persuading you to come to the point of view that what they're selling you is what you need. With the power selling process, it's totally different. It's not about persuasion and convincing. It's about helping the client come to clarity and building trust that you and your solution are the best option for them. So by the end of this video, I'm going to show you how you can use the power selling methodology to sell without persuasion and convincing, but to sell with authority and power. Now, here's the thing. Even the best sales process won't help you much if you don't have enough quality opportunities to use it with. That's why we created the Clients on Command training. It's all about building a marketing process that brings pre-sold, ready-to-buy clients into your calendar so that when you use the power framework that I'm about to share with you, you're not chasing, you're choosing. If you want to create a consistent flow of the right clients for your consultancy firm, check out the link below this video in the description and get access to that training. It's the exact system I used to go from chasing work to having a steady pipeline of premium clients coming to me pre-sold, ready to buy. So just to recap, POWER is an acronym that stands for Position Yourself as the Authority, Own the Agenda, Win Their Trust, Educate, and Recommend. So positioning yourself as the authority is all about how you set up the meeting even before you get into the meeting with your client, but also about how you present yourself in that meeting. You need to be positioning yourself as the authority before the meeting by presenting your client with educational material that helps them to understand the value of your offer. So even before you get into the sales meeting itself, they understand exactly what you stand for, exactly why your solution is the best solution for them, and they're really pre-sold, ideally entering that sales meeting wanting to come to a conclusion of buying your services because they already see that as the best solution. When you enter the sales meeting, you must continue to present yourself as the authority. It's really about entering that sales meeting with a different mindset than many consultants enter with. And the majority of consultants I see come to a sales meeting obviously wanting to make a sale, but they put the client in a position of power. And I think that comes about because we are service providers. We provide services to our clients. So we automatically almost fit into that master-servant role. So we see the client as the master and we position ourselves as a servant far too often. But when you switch that around and your mindset is that you are the authority and you have a role as, perhaps, if I can put it this way, of being the savior, not the servant, then your mindset must be that the client needs you more than you need them. So the client needs your solution more than you need their sale and more than you need their money. They need you more than you need them. When you go into a sales meeting, positioning yourself as the authority with that mindset, it really puts a different perspective on how you approach the sale. And that's where the second aspect of owning the agenda comes into play, because owning the agenda is all about setting the terms of how you're going to approach that sales meeting up front. You're going to set out what you intend to cover through that meeting and the results you intend to come to. How you're going to conduct the meeting in terms of the steps you're going to take and the outcome you expect at the end of it. And that can be about really coming to a conclusion about whether what you have to offer and whether what the client needs is a good fit. It's not about getting the sale, it's about discovering the truth. And when you have that attitude about owning the agenda of that meeting, that the end result is that you will discover the truth so you can come to an agreement about the future direction, whether that's working together or not. That removes a lot of the pressure from the situation. You don't have to make a sale, but you do need to come to an agreement about what the truth or what the reality is. So own the agenda by setting out the steps in the sales meeting that you want to take, and really allow yourself to be that diagnostic doctor in the situation, where we've talked about previously approaching that sales meeting as if you're a doctor and having a patient come to you where you're the authority and you need to diagnose their situation so that you can come to the conclusion about the steps forward, about how to deal with their challenges or how to deal with their situation and how to solve their problem. W stands for win their trust. So winning their trust is really about conducting that diagnostic process. We don't win trust by telling people all about ourselves, all about how good we are, our credentials, our experience. What wins people's trust is our interest in them. We need to show that we care. There's a well-known saying that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So that should be our purpose in this diagnostic process, of showing them how much we care about their situation, by showing interest, by being curious, by asking intelligent questions that enable us to diagnose the root cause of their problem. And again, I think this is where the power approach is able to go much deeper than a typical sales approach that I've seen many other consultants take, where they see that a client has a problem, or the client talks about a problem that they're struggling with, and immediately we see that there's a problem that we can solve. We want to jump in and offer the solution. we are so used to being problem solvers that we have a natural inclination to be able to tell people about how we would solve their problem. So in the power approach, we need to resist that temptation of jumping in too soon to tell our potential clients about how to solve their problem. No, we need to actually back off and find more understanding, a deeper level of understanding their problem. And that's about asking really intelligent questions about the impact of the situation, rather than just jumping in when they tell us that they're struggling with a certain situation and we say, oh, yes, I know how to solve that. We need to back off and say, tell me more about that situation and how it impacts you. What are the ramifications of that problem? What is the evidence that shows up that show you that you have that problem, and how deep does that go? What are the long-term implications of it as well as the short-term? What is the advantage of fixing it? We need to really be able to go deep on the problem and show that we really understand them, first of all, but our intelligent questions really demonstrate to a client our depth of knowledge about their situation in a way that us telling them about our credentials and our experience will never be able to do. When we're able to dig deep into a client's challenges and show that we have day-to-day experience because of the questions we ask and the knowledge we actually demonstrate, we win their trust. And that is a very powerful way to win their trust. Once we've won their trust and once we understand completely what the situation is, how important it is for the client to solve that problem, then we need to educate them about the solution. And it's not really about selling our solution, even at this point. It's not about showing them what we want to do to solve their problem. It's really about educating them about the reason they have the problem and what having the best solution looks like. It's first of all helping them see that there's a problem that they need to move away from, or it's a pain point or a challenge that needs to be solved. And then we need to show them what the other side of that looks like. What is it that having the solution looks like? And what's the difference between the two? What is the positive outcomes of the solution compared to the negative impacts of the problem? When we educate them around that, it creates desire to have that solution. It's not about selling them the solution. It's about creating a desire within them to want that solution, so that when it comes to the recommending the solution or recommending how we're going to solve that problem for them, they're already bought into that. They already want what we're about to offer. And when it's about describing our approach, how we're going to work together, and even within that approach, we need to go beyond the typical approach of showing people the processes we're going to take, the steps we're going to take, and what's involved in that, because that can often appear to be very painful, and when we describe our process, typically in the things that we're going to do, it is typically boring and not very inspiring. We need to change that from not telling people what we're going to do through our process of working together. We need to tell them about the outcomes we're going to achieve when we work together. So when we recommend our approach to achieve the outcomes that they want, they've automatically bought into that. There's no need to convince or persuade. When we've built desire through that diagnostic process and by educating about what the outcomes are possible for them, they want what we have to offer already. So when we recommend how we work together, they will be typically ready to sign with us. So rather than asking you to send a proposal, they'll be asking you, how can we start? And that's about making agreement and getting signed off about starting, rather than sending a proposal that gets lost in the ether and gets ignored and you get ghosted. We want to eliminate that. We want to be like my client, Dom, who, when he started using this process, it gave him a much better structure of how to conduct sales conversations with his clients. And in his words, that was really well received by his clients. And one situation he told me about was he was in a discussion with a client who was trying to lowball him, or as many people would describe it, asking him to sharpen his pencil on the price. But because of the approach, he felt like he had a much better position of authority in that conversation, and he stuck to his guns and detailed how they're going to work together and why, what the value of the project would be for the client that really justified the price at the higher level. So he didn't buckle to the client's pressure to reduce his price. He stuck with the authority of presenting his price based on the power recommendations, and the client accepted that and went ahead with that. And he felt that the power process gave him the confidence and the structure and the authority and trust that was built up through that process to stick with it. And his client was able to see that as well. And that was a very happy outcome for Dom, but also a great outcome for the client, because they got the services that they wanted, and Dom was able to give them without feeling like needed to shortcut any of the processes, because he went in at a low ball price. So the power approach is by far the most effective authority positioning approach in selling your consultancy services that I've ever seen and ever come across. So when you adopt the power selling approach, it feels much less like selling. It feels much more like diagnosing. It creates a level of authority that you would never achieve in the typical selling process, and it builds trust in a way that the typical selling process will never be able to achieve. The power process removes pressure and manipulation. And when you use the power approach, it becomes a natural extension of your expertise and your experience. So think about how you can adopt the power approach. How can you position yourself as the authority? How can you set out an agenda and a structured process that you're going to follow? How will you win your clients' trust? How will you educate them about the difference between the impact of their current situation and the value of the solution? And how will you go about recommending your services to your clients? If you'd like to even go deeper into this process and learn how you can apply the power process, look out for this next video, where I will tell you more about how to make this a practical part of your sales and marketing process, and how you can sell with authority, how you can sell with power, how you can build trust in your clients and build their desire for your services without any manipulation or pressure.